entity.
On them, and I think it's showing up in the images. And what I am doing, and this is the procedure that I use for both sample 1 and 2, I start with a picture at the front where the label is in sharp focus, and then I move the focus a little bit further into the volume, and I take a picture, and I just keep doing that until I hit the back side. But be aware that there's a little bit of dust that has settled on the surfaces of these ampules, so that you need to pay attention of when the slices are focusing on the outside of the sample, that those are external dust particles and not floccules in the colloidal sample itself.
And I copy all, Don.
And I'm going to go ahead and take another series. I probably took 3 or 4 series of these slices through sample 2, and I've taken 2 now through sample 1. I'm going to take a couple more.
Copy.
And I that there was
Sorry folks, that's not moving.
a particle agglomeration. There was what looked like one large entity floating around in there, and I just wrote that off as a piece of contamination. And it looks like that same entity is there in about the same location, and it looks like it's grown in size. So either it was an actual floccule that had formed, which was strange that only one formed, or maybe it was a piece of contamination and stuff has agglomerated and or grown on the outer surface of it. That's currently my working hypothesis. And that's the one that it looks like it has kind of feathery wisps on the outside of it.
I copy that, Don, and we can see that in the video.
Somehow floccules came together to look like a piece of land.
And we copy that, Don. We do see that little blob in sample 1.
And I'm not sure whether these particles have been there for a long time and we just missed them, or whether they formed over the last month or so since we last looked at this. The lighting has to be just right in order to see these particles. If you use a standard flash, or if you just kind of shine the flashlight through it, it looks water clear. But if you put the light at just the right angle, then all of a sudden you could see these particles floating in the solution. And what I've done is I've taken a whole series of pictures with the flash turned off, and I focus on the front end of the ampule, and you don't see.
Yeah, see, that one's not really moving.
Particles, and then I change the focus in slices through the sample. until I hit the back side of the ampule. And so that kind of gives you an indication of the depth of these of the ampule, and it lets you see that these particles are pretty much uniformly scattered throughout the whole volume. There doesn't seem to be any macroscopic structure, but there are a whole series of these nominally 500 micron size particles.
Copy that, Don. That sounds like it's really interesting. Looking forward to those pictures.
And I got the computer set back up again. SSCs have a high vapor pressure here, and unless they're actively being used for an experiment, they get moved off to do other things. I think the B-SCAT SSC got usurped by Robonaut, and he's using it now. So I had to go round up another computer and get it set up, and currently the images are going to be on SSC 15. If you guys want to get them down, and with just the mini mag light, not the flash, the shutter speed. I'm shooting at f/22. The shutter speed's around a fifth of a second, so it's rather slow. But it's not a moving target, and the particles are just stationary, and this allows me to use a fairly small f-stop so that you can get a reasonable depth of focus and still have shutter speeds that are reasonable for taking pictures.
And Don, I copy all that. That's good information.
And what I'll do is I'll take another series of slices, and again, when you see these pictures, I'll focus on the front window, and you can see the
entity.
focusing further and further away from the camera, and I move through the volume of the fluid until I hit the back window, and then I'll back up to the front window. And I'll take a couple more series of images like that with chamber 2, and then I'll move on to chamber 1.
Copy all, Don. Appreciate your work.
And if you use the flash for these pictures, the particles just don't show up. Particles just don't show up at all. And so I'm wondering whether these floccules formed all along, but we just missed them. They got feathery little wispy edges on them, and I think it's showing up in the images. And what I am doing, and this is the procedure that I use for both sample 1 and 2. I start with a picture at the front where the label is in sharp focus, and then I move the focus a little bit further into the volume, and I take a picture, and I just keep doing that until I hit the back side. But be aware that there's a little bit of dust that has settled on the surfaces of these ampules, so that you need to pay attention of when the slices are focusing on the outside of the sample, that those are external dust particles and not floccules in the colloidal sample itself.
And I copy all, Don.
And I'm going to go ahead and take another series. I probably took 3 or 4 series of these slices through sample 2, and I take 2 now through sample 1. I'm going to take a couple more.
Copy.
And I do remember in sample 1 that there was, when it couldn't see any particle agglomeration, there was what looked like one large entity floating around. There, and I just wrote that off as a piece of contamination because of the way the setup was, or perhaps they've been ripening all this time, and now they're at a size that we can conveniently see them. I'm not sure. Either one of those make a reasonable working hypothesis to me.
Yes, and I'm pretty sure Matt Lynch would be able to shed some light on that for us as well.
I bet he could shed some light with maybe even a little bit of scattering. So I'm going to go ahead and set the microphone down and start taking some more pictures. And do you have do you have a view from the MPC?
We have a beautiful view, yes, Don.
And I'm going to fiddle with exposure on the MPC camera to see if I can't fix it so you guys can see those particles a little better.
Copy.